We are now being joined by a friend of the show, one of my favorite people in the industry, my guy, Jacob Meyers, also known as League Him, one of the best scouts in the entire business. Jacob, thank you for taking time out to join us on the platform here. We're excited to have you. A lot to talk about. How you feeling, bro?
Feeling great. I'm excited to talk too. I appreciate you having me on your platform.
I want to get right to it, man. You dropped a big board a couple of days ago. Anytime you drop a big board, I think it's something that a lot of people give attention to. Because, like I said, one of the best in the business. I want to start with a few things that stood out to not me. So I'm going to pose questions and opinions about the draft board based off the feedback and response I've seen in some of your comments on YouTube or Twitter and everything like that. So you can give a more vocal, large opinion to people that had questions about everything. Keaton Waggler at number 5, a guy that you put me on to probably 3 to 4 months ago to keep my eye on and to see the rise he's had, especially over the last month or so. It's kind of been crazy because it went from being unknown to you putting him on me and Christian's radar to then him kind of being so solid enough to be like back of first round. Then it went up to about, early or excuse me, late mid first round to now you have him 5th. Can you give us some insight on him? What first even attracted you to him to have him be a guy that you were putting on people's radars? And how have you looked at his rise over the last month or so?
Yeah, I think the first thing with Keaton Waggler is it's a unique path. We don't really see players break out in the regards to him, particularly, he's on a really high level team in Illinois. They're contender each year at the top of the Big Ten. But he was not a well known recruit. I want to say he was a consensus 267th ranked player, albeit a 2-time state champion, Gatorade Player of the Year in Kansas. Heads to Illinois, and you start to hear a little bit of rumblings preseason from NBA scouts that make their rounds in September, like, hey, like Illinois might have got a sleeper.
Mm.
And then you start watching the first couple games, and you're like, okay, 6'6", good positional size as a guard. He's making decisions, really high level shooter, and then just tracking him throughout the year. You kind of talked about that at the onset of the show. He just keeps improving. So the bar that he set continues to rise. We're looking at, at this point now with Boswell injured, he's a 6'6" point guard for them, at least right now, shooting 43% from three on high volume, operating out of ball screens, completely taking over in the second half on the road in some of the toughest venues in the sport. So it's a really cool rise looking at a player that, like you said, has gone from completely unknown to not just one of the best draft prospects, but one of the best players in America.
Do you take any consideration into like a hot streak versus the reality of what a player is, right? Like, does that affect your thinking of how you level something? How much does a player have to do for it to be a good 3 to 4 game stretch versus no, he needs to move up largely in my mock draft or my big board?
I think it probably depends on the player. I'll make an easy comparison. So like Darren Peterson, AJ Dabansa, we have a bigger sample size as a, scouting community of those players. They've played on the EYBL circuit, Adidas. They're at all these different camps. So we've known a lot about them. So when you have a player like Keaton, who hasn't had that type of attention throughout high school, it is newer. So like you say, you have to kind of weigh all the different variables. I think ultimately, as a scout, as someone that's trying to cover the draft, you just kind of take all the puzzle pieces, all the data points, and you want to just pay respect to each point and
Hmm.
then trust your gut and kind of weigh everything together, and try and decipher what it is. But that is also the fun part about in season, because everything's changing. These players have the opportunity every night, big time matchups, national television, to change people's opinions on them. And I think it's super important. We've talked about this a bunch. Like you
Yeah.
can't be anchored in your opinion,
Hmm.
because these things are constantly evolving. So I think to your question of adjusting the board, it's kind of, you don't want to be too reactionary, right? But at the same time, players are showing you something each time they play, and their journey is a story. And if you know the whole story, you feel a little bit more confident in projecting out the future.
One of the big things about this draft class in totality is that top spot. And that top spot is those top three. That's what everybody's talking about when you look at teams that are at the bottom of each standings, Eastern or Western Conference. Will the pick land in the top three? Obviously, everybody wants a number one pick, but it feels like a lottery could be won by just having the top three pick in this year. Do you still have that opinion, or has that now become a four-team race where you're involving Caleb Wilson into the top four? And if that is so, is there a world where a guy like Keaton or anybody else could enter that conversation, or is that lock and secured in your opinion, three or four going forward?
That's a hell of a question. It's probably tricky to answer. I would say, if we were writing all the names on a piece of paper right now,
Mm-hmm.
I probably feel comfortable putting a little Sharpie around 1 and 2, AJ
Mm-hmm.
or Darren, whatever that order is. And then I think, Boozer is an incredible player. Talk about Caleb Wilson, Keaton Waggler's making a punch, Kingston Fleming's making a punch, some other names, Michael Brown, Nate Ament, plenty of other players. Um, I still feel it's a two-man race,
Mm-hmm.
but I do understand the claims, and I think there are people that I don't blame you for wanting to Cam Boozer one. It's just like you said, it's such a star-powered draft. It's kind of pick your poison.
I like Cam Boozer as well. I think he is a guy that is dominating the conversation around this draft, because when you look at a lot of people who are respected in this line of work, like yourself and a lot of other scouts, when you look at their mock drafts or you look at the big boards, he is a consistent guy at number three. Out of the top three, he finds himself positioned at three. Why do you think that is? And what is putting those two guys above him in a tier of their own versus him? And again, like you just said to anybody out there, we are understanding that Cam Boozer is an incredible talent. There's not much negative to say about his game, but I'm just wondering, for the sake of the community, why is this a guy that can have the games he's having and still just be kind of solidified at three? Because it doesn't feel like anybody is moving him up or down, but just a consensus feel is that he is the third out of the picking.
Yeah, I think it honestly just says more about AJ and Darren than him. I mean, we're looking at Cam Boozer, 6'9", a guy with probably one of the higher intersections of feel, skill, physicality, fundamentals, winning pedigree in recent drafts. I mean,
Yes.
across the board, so solid, so productive, so unwavering. He just leaves his fingerprints on all over the game. He's won at an incredible level, won Peach Jam, won championships with his high school program. You can make the argument he's the best player in college basketball right now, front runner, National Player of the Year, could go to a Final Four. So I don't really think it's, if we're getting really analytical, you could say, if you zoom out, 1,000 degrees and you're like, all right, if I'm building an NBA team, what's the most valuable thing in a 7-game series in June? When you look at AJ and Darren, you're looking at both of them 6'6" plus that can slice through a defense
Mm-hmm.
with ease, create advantages off the bounce, get by their man with ease, defend multiple positions, play off the ball, play on the ball, create for others. So I think there's a certain comfortability with the perimeter and more. They kind of fit the archetypes the league has coveted over the years, and it closely resembles what we've seen work. So I think teams probably have a more comfortability with that. Now, however, we talked about Boozer. Sometimes outliers break archetypes, right? So when you're evaluating him against those guys, you do need to see, all right, how much do I value what he brings?
Last thing I'm gonna ask you about your big board before we start to head to break. A guy that is always in every comment of anybody that I follow, Darius Acuff, a guy that you have here at 15. Arkansas fans are like not happy unless he is like top 6, top 7. Give me some things about Darius Acuff, and let us know some things you enjoy about his game for those that represent Arkansas that'll be looking for some love for Darius Acuff.
Yeah, Arkansas fans are always engaged on social media. I think they're definitely one of the more passionate groups you see in this space. But Darius Acuff, we talk about Keaton, we talk about AJ. Acuff's closer to the other guys in terms of exposure. Guys playing on USA Basketball, led the EYBL on scoring, played for IMG. I think if you're deciphering, his value, he's gotten a lot better, not only as a shooter, as a pull-up guy, but as an orchestrator, as a floor general. And we're seeing that pay dividends. Next in line, we've seen so many good guards for Coach Cal, and he's doing it at a really high level right now, not turning the ball over, making incredible decisions out of the pick and roll, shooting at a high level, and he's one of the best players as a freshman in college basketball.
Hit subscribe for more news, highlights, and analysis from the NBA on NBC.